Good morning, my good friends. You know this phrase in Iowa. If you don't like the weather, just wait 15 minutes. It got cold overnight. And for morning prayer, I was thinking about this. This roller coaster that the weather seems to be in Iowa, and thinking too about the roller coaster of emotions that so many of us feel, so many of us experience on a real regular basis in the midst of all of this craziness and all of this social isolation. And so as I was thinking about this roller coaster of emotions and roller coaster of experience, I was also thinking about, you remember the story of Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead? Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead. It's in John 11, but in John 11:35, it's the shortest verse in Scripture. Here's tossed by the wind. It's the shortest verse in Scripture, John 11:35. We hear Jesus wept. Now think about this. Jesus has the power to raise Lazarus from the dead, and Jesus does. There's a resurrection. There's new life. Dead things come back to life. That's a really big deal, and that's cause for celebration. But before that happens, before Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead, Jesus weeps. He cries. In fact, in another piece in that story, we hear that he's greatly disturbed, moved, and I remember that the Greek for that is that when Jesus is greatly disturbed, when he's greatly moved, that it's the kind of emotion that you have when when the snot is coming out of your mouth and your nose because you're crying that much. You remember? Have you had those moments? And maybe you can recall some of those moments in your life where you're so overcome that your face is just leaking emotion. Jesus is greatly disturbed. He's moved to pity, and he weeps in that story of Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead. And Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead. He calls to others and he says, "Hey, move the stone away." He says to others, "Unbind my friend Lazarus and let him go." Now, here's one kind of kicker in that story, that the name Lazarus, at least as far as I remember, and some of you Greek scholars and pastors, you can correct me on this, but the name Lazarus means he saves, or my Lord saves. And so in the midst of all of this emotion that so many of us are feeling, in the midst of all of this pain, and sometimes moved to tears, know that God is with you in your tears. Know that God is with you in your anger, in your frustration, and that God causes new things to come out of death. That even when and where there is death, God brings about life. As we move into Holy Week this coming weekend, that's a promise for us. That's a piece of good news. That's a piece of hope. That's a piece of encouragement that God brings life out of death, that God conquers evil, and that God goes with us in this roller coaster of emotions that we so often feel. My friends, have a great and God-blessed day. Be very well. And if you don't like the weather today, I'm told just wait a little bit. It's going to get better. Take care. We'll talk to you soon.